Hello, believers, non believers, and everyone in between. You're listening to Stories with Sapphire. I am Sapphire Sandalo. Now get cozy and open your mind because it's story time.
And the spiritual world to me means the rainforest and the flora and fauna, because I grew up with my grandmother and her indigenous teachings that every life form out there has a spirit. Hi, my name is Rosa Vázquez Espinosa. I am a Peruvian scientist with indigenous roots from both the Amazon and the Andes.
I reached out to Rosa after a post of hers came up on Instagram.
Like everything that you said in this like carousel post, I was like, yes, yes, yes. I like all of this.
And I think that post definitely generated quite a lot of controversy, a lot of support, and then a lot of people also just feeling very offended by my own personal opinion, which is interesting because I think it shows that a lot of people, as you just said, are not attuned to their intuition or will judge those that where intuition play a bigger role in their lives.
We'll talk more about that in a bit. I'm really excited to share my conversation with Rosa. She's so intelligent and thoughtful, bridging the divide between indigenous and Western science. In this episode, she shares stories of the spirits of the Amazon, like the infectious Tunchi, the feared Chuyachaki, and the Amazonian Bigfoot. She talks more about her work as a scientist and explorer and her book, The Spirit of the Rainforest. As always, if anything you hear reminds you of your own experiences, or if you have any thoughts on the episode, you can send it to story@storieswithsapphire.com. And now, here's Rosa.
Growing up, I definitely had paranormal experiences that I have definitely asked myself more about growing up. The first one that I remember very clearly is about a spirit that for native people in Peru, we known as Tunchi. And the first time I heard about this spirit's shapeless form was when my cousin, who was like my brother growing up, he's only 2 years older than me. We played around all the time. I used to call him my brother. We were kids. And he was very playful, very dynamic. And suddenly he became really sick. And nobody could tell why. He was taken to all the most advanced hospitals. And nobody could figure out why he kept losing weight and being so sick. He was only 6 or 7, and the doctors were really concerned because at some point, one of the specialists basically told my aunt and my uncle, just get ready, just make him comfortable, which was really dramatic. And of course, I was a child. I didn't understand what was happening, except that there was this sense of doom right in our house. And I just was annoyed that I couldn't be playing with him anymore. And my uncle, who spent a lot of years of his life growing up in the Amazon, he came back one day and he said, "Is the Tunchi? Is the Tunchi? He has been cursed by the Tunchi. We have to do something about it." Is the only explanation. And basically, the Tunchi is believed to be this spirit that may sometimes materialize as a bird that sings at night, that will basically be flying in and around the territory. And if it ever approaches to your house and you happen to pay attention and rather than ignore it, then it will start singing closer to your home and it will be bringing disease and pain, even death to those that are the youngest. And there's many ways in which people treat, against evil spirits. It varies between the Amazon and the Andes. But basically what my family decided to do was to approach a very powerful Andean healer at the time, because we were in the city in the moment and he was living on the outskirts. It was the fastest we could get to someone that had this expertise. Again, I am probably 5, they're just taking me on the road. My cousin was really sick, and I remember entering to this man's house, a very humble hut. His name, he's not alive anymore, but his name was Don Pablito. And actually, after this time, he cared for us extensively. And he had an Indian methods of passing the person that is deceased with an egg. So you rub an egg all around the person, and then you also used tobacco, which is an Amazonian plant, to blow the smoke over the person's body, and with that being able to kind of redirect the energy. Anyways, he ended up doing the method a few different sessions, and he did say he also was convinced that my cousin had been cursed by the Tunchi. To this day, we don't know what it was, except that a few months later my cousin recovered. He is fine and healthy, and the doctors were just completely shocked. Whatever we want to call it, I don't know. To this day, I have no explanation, because I know my family did consult it. Although we have such deep traditional knowledge, even my grandmother, everything she was doing for him was not working. But to this day, they are convinced that the sickest he ever was because of the Tunchi.
And you know what I find so fascinating is that because I'm Filipino, and so in Filipino folklore there are a lot of similar stories of like different types of entities that will also like make you sick if you like enter their territory, you disrespect them somehow, usually in nature. And I find it so fascinating that like all over the world there's kind of like a different version of that. And so could you speak to, I guess, like the universality of
Yeah,
the fact that like people will get these like supernatural illnesses from spirits?
it's interesting because I do think there is commonalities in indigenous worldviews around the world, or even just some local folklore, as you are mentioning. So that's just one story. I have multiple that kind of vary, but I do think there's points of commonality. And I think ultimately, before we have different kinds of more formal explanation for phenomena, people, how would they describe things based on the things they see around and they know? So a boiling river, for example, in Peru, the locals used to call it the river boiled by the heat of the sun, because that is, based on their direct observations, the only like direct explanation that they can give. So I think I can only imagine, right, back in the time of our ancestors, if you just don't have any other explanation or testing to even have an alternative idea of what's going on, then I think nature has always inspired both a reverence and also a little bit of a fear. And in that way it makes sense, because you do have predators and you have different dangers that if you are not careful, then you will fall sick. So I think it does make sense. And I have also heard that it could have been a way from the elderly to instill that sense of respect, that sense of don't go around and do crazy wild things, because that means you will get injured, by sharing those stories. So I have seen that commonly across not just Peru but in other cultures too. There's just still so much we don't know. There's still so many like cases within modern medicine that people research one and like over time and time again, and yet we don't have a clear cut, easy to digest understanding or mechanics as to how that happened. So I do think there is an air of the extraordinary, and a lot of people are really uncomfortable with that, because we must be able to explain everything. But at the same time, we are only human, and we are in a world that is so much more extraordinary in my opinion than we give it credit for. There's a one of the more feared spirits in the Amazon forest is called the Chuyachaki, and I am very respectful of that too, whatever it actually means, because of the many instances that I have heard. So the Chuyachaki is meant to be a spirit that typically will be a small size, and it will have kind of like a human-like form, but a bit like a baby's face, and feet that resemble a feet of an old man, and one foot is going to be bigger than the other, so it's always going to be walking with a little bit, of a weird vibe. And it is believed that in some instances it can take the shape of your loved ones to attract you, and it is meant to be appearing whenever you are intending to or doing something negative against the rainforest, even if you just have a thought about it, or if by any chance you were unfortunate and happened to pass by its territory. And the way I've been described about this spirit, it's actually from some of my most trusted indigenous partners and leaders that have even faced jaguars 5 meters in front of them, that have literally had to combat anacondas. I mean, leaders that, they are not fearful, they are fearless. And yet, when you ask them what is the thing they're the most scared about the Amazon, they will tell you without any doubt, it is the Chuyachaki. And the way they describe it is it will appear at night and you will feel it because the jungle will go silent and you will feel cold in your bones. And if you are prepared for it, you will be carrying garlic, salt, as well as Amazonian tobacco in your pockets, and perhaps that could appease the Chuyachaki. But if not, it may turn into one of your loved ones' voices. And one of my indigenous partners has not only sensed that feeling of intense cold in the jungle and silence, which is weird. If you are ever in a silent jungle, run the other way. But he swears that he has heard the voices of his children calling him from deeper in the jungle. And whenever he has felt that, he just remembers, no, my children are at home the other direction. I'm gonna run because the Chuyachaki is trying to get me to go deeper, and it's probably gonna make me disappear after that. And so he just runs the other way. But I think when you see the fear in people's faces, it just makes it feel so real. So I do not joke around if they claim that, it's not a good night to be going out, or I will always be carrying some Amazonian tobacco with me because I know I am a scientist, but I do also respect there is a hell of a lot that we just don't know about. What I also do think is interesting is that parallel to those experiences from friends that are local biologists, there was one particularly that described she used to go into the jungle between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. because her job was to document mammals. And the way you do that back in the day, before we had camera traps, was by learning the reflection of the animal's eyes through the night. And so basically you're looking for a pair of eyes, the color, the shape of the glow, quite precise work, which meant she had to spend a lot of time by herself at night in the jungle. She was also fearless. She would just go for hours in completely unknown territory. And one time, one family that she was staying with said, "Aren't you never afraid?" And she said, "No, nothing ever happens to me. I'm fine." And they said, "Well, if you ever feel cold in your bones and feel that the jungle goes silent, just run back to us. Don't take any risks." So she said, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never felt that." And fun enough, not too long after that, at 2 a.m., she does happen to have that feeling. Everything went quiet, which is rare because the jungle comes alive at night. And she felt a deep sinking sense in her stomach. She felt cold and she said, okay, this is what they were talking about. So she did her best to run and try to kind of create a new path as she went in case something was following her. She locked herself into the hut. They kind of put all the things up against the wall just in case. When they woke up the next morning, they saw fresh jaguar prints